Hello everyone, Rhonda here. Welcome back to my studio. I'm just going to give you another quick little tiny tip. This is about choosing your palette colors. So this was one of the hardest things for me when I first started painting, and something that I highly recommend you take a color theory class. That will help you a lot. If you look in the description, I have a link to the color theory class that I'm taking, and I cannot recommend it enough. It is such a good course. You will learn more than you dreamed about colors. So I will give you a link to that. But I was going to talk to you a little bit about just choosing your palette and what I typically choose. So as most of you know, I use the Heritage Multimedia acrylics. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. These are extremely good artist quality acrylics, and they are decently priced. So if you look in the description, there's also a link to those. They are probably the best paints I've ever used, and I highly recommend them. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So what you see on my palette right now is my typical palette. So this is what I tend to put out if I'm painting just generally like a flower painting. If I'm going to paint, you know, right now tonight or today I was going to paint like a little mountain scene. So this would be the typical palette that I would put out. So I have my Hansa yellow, Daria yellow, and yellow oxide. So I like having the three yellows. Those are kind of your warmest colors as well. So you'll notice one of the first things that I look at is that I need to have warm colors in my painting, and I need to have cool colors in my painting. So that's where I'll pick. The yellows are typically what I pick for my warm colors. I also have the Naphthol Red Light, which is more of a red orange. I typically choose that one because it's kind of more versatile. I do also have plain Naphthol Red, which is a little bit more to the red violet side of the color wheel. So sometimes I'll use that in different situations. I have my Pine Green, which is just a good versatile mixed color, and Burnt Sienna. I use a lot of Burnt Sienna. And actually I'm kind of lucky today because this is my last little bit of Burnt Sienna out of the container, and my new paint just arrived today. So then I usually pick a blue. So my go-to blue is the Phthalo blue. It's a bit of a green blue, so I find it mixes really nice for making different shades of green. And I just really like the Phthalo blue as a basic blue. And then I always put in a cool color, so my cool violet. So this is the red violet. That's my typical go-to violet. It's another kind of versatile color that you can use in just about anything. And then I have a big pile of white because I always use more white than anything else. That's just basic titanium white. So this is kind of my basic palette that I typically use. Now I'm going to just let you know some of the other things that I sometimes use. So sometimes I will put out a second blue. This is an ultramarine blue is the other go-to blue that I typically use. And I will typically put out ultramarine blue as well if I'm going to be doing like an ocean scene, or like when I did the Split Rock Lighthouse, I used quite a lot of ultramarine blue as well in my sky and that sort of thing. So I will put out ultramarine blue if I'm going to be painting something that has a lot of blues in it. The one thing that you do have to keep in mind as you're painting is that the phthalo blue is an extremely strong pigment, so you'll use a lot less of it than, say, for example, an ultramarine blue. I do also have a tube of cerulean blue that I will use if I want to have a good mixing color. Cerulean blue isn't nearly as strong as the phthalo blue, so it tends to make nicer mixes. You don't have to be so careful with the amount of it that you use, because with the phthalo blue you can easily overpower your painting, so or your color mix. So I do sometimes use the cerulean blue. I don't use it real often because it is a much more expensive pigment, which is why I only have it in the little tubes. One of the other ones that I will sometimes put out is the phthalo green blue. I tend to use the phthalo green blue in more of my animal paintings and stuff. It's typically if I want to have a cooler green. The phthalo green blue is definitely on the cooler side, so I will use that if I feel like I need to have a cooler green out there for my mixes. Quinacridone violet is another one. It's a beautiful color. I love this color. I typically will put this out if I'm going to be painting flowers. I really like this as my cool violet in the flowers. It has a beautiful hue to it, and I really like it when you mix it with the Daria yellow. It makes some really pretty colors. So that's when I typically use the quinacridone. One of the other ones that I will use quite often is my, not that one, is my umbers. that other one. Oh, here it is. Ah, yes. So I have burnt umber and I have raw umber. And these ones I typically will put out if I'm painting an animal, especially if I'm painting a horse or a donkey, that sort of thing. I really, really like these colors for animal paintings. So I'll typically use these when I'm painting animals. They are very nice toning colors, and sometimes, you know, I can just use just that color. Like for example, the raw umber is one that when I'm painting like a buckskin horse and I want to have like the sooty areas, rather than mixing up a color, I'll actually use the raw umber because it makes a really nice sooty color for a buckskin. So those are kind of those ones. I do also have a couple more here in the tubes. I have Indian yellow, which is it's a transparent color. So if I want to do some glazing, I'll typically put some Indian yellow out on landscapes and stuff. I haven't used it a lot yet, so I want to do more playing with that one. And I have Paranone orange. Now this is another really expensive pigment, which is why it's in why I have it in the little tube, but it is actually really beautiful for when you're painting snow. It's a warm orange and it works nicely for painting snow, but you don't need to have a color like this because you can make your own orange for the warm colors on the snow. So, but that's just another one that I have that I sometimes put out. I do also, occasionally, I will put out the medium white. Now, basically, medium white is just a mixed color. It's the white and some of the Hansa yellow, I believe, is what goes into this one. Yeah, white and yellow. And when I will typically use this is if I'm going to be painting white flowers, because I have a bad habit of going up to value 10 white too quickly, and then my flowers get washed out and all the petals kind of look the same. So I will put out the medium white, and I won't let myself use the pure titanium white until I'm on the last petals and just doing like the edging on the petals. That forces me to not get too light too fast, which is a good thing. So this is kind of, I call it a cheater color for myself, because I use it to keep myself from getting too much into the titanium white. So that's just a little bit about my palette. So that's just another tip for you with respect to laying out your palette and choosing your colors. So I hope that helps you.